Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. Let's say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Josh is sick. He had a COVID test today, so, can we get him up on the screen?
I'm here, Mr. Mayor.
I can, yeah, so, there you are. So with that, he'll be teleporting into us.
He's double trouble there.
Huh?
Looks like he's twice there.
Yeah, he is twice.
Actually, 3,
It's-
4, 5, 6.
People, there's quite a few of me there.
Yeah.
It's the operator tonight. We don't have the regular person.
Oh.
We have a substitute filling in.
Overqualified.
So, I take a motion to approve the consent agenda, or to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion by Maggie, seconded by Bruce. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Excuse me. Item number 1 is the consent agenda. I would take a motion to approve the consent agenda as listed out.
So moved.
Rick made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Sean made a second. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
One thing, Mr. Mayor, did we want to record this meeting? I noticed it's not being recorded.
It is being recorded on our live stream.
It is.
Oh, is it?
It is.
Okay.
Is what I've been told. So, let's see here. Number 2, the Main Street reconstruction. Mr. Cavett.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. I see I kind of have dominate the agenda here tonight, so I thought I ought to be here in person, especially since I heard the chief was running things. So start out quick with just an update of the project, kind of where things are at. First of all, I guess this weekend, I think as far as I know, everything went well. I was here for a while on Saturday and tried to eavesdrop on some comments here and there, but I didn't, all seemed pretty interesting and things looked like it was working all right. So I'll be interested to hear if you've got any comments from the weekend as well. All the curb is now done, all the way to the end of the project. Everything is completed from curb standpoint. So at this point, all that's going to be taking place is basically concrete paving, sidewalks, and then starting to restore boulevards and outside beyond the sidewalks out in the residential area. So, in fact, it's probably not going to look like a lot of activity in the next few days because they're laying forms and dowel baskets and string lines to prepare for the paving, and it's paving scheduled for the eastbound lane and parking lane. So eastbound lane will be like Thursday, Friday, and then they'll come in behind and do all the parking lane, the curb in the eastbound lane. And then that'll sit for till next week, and then they'll work on the westbound driving lane and then parking lane. So they're gonna do it all in one clean shot all the way down. So everything that's left will be kind of done in one shot. So that's kind of, I guess, the update in a nutshell. I guess any questions, updates on the projects or comments maybe from this weekend or anything like that that you've heard?
What I've heard looks nice and it was well needed and the parking, doors are gonna, you hear that, but no, all in all, it was very positive.
Yeah, I got some comments, people like the street lights and I didn't hear anyone complaining about the roundabouts. So I think they're working out well.
Yeah, I did hear somebody walking through the roundabout going, "Oh, this is a roundabout." So, yeah, very observant, so, okay. Is anything else on update?
I like the signs at the crossing walks. you know, about the state law, although when I crossed through them, car didn't stop. But I think it's gonna take some time for people to just get used to where the crosswalks are.
Yeah. And the one out here, for example, that'll be a sensor control, and that will, once that gets turned on, it'll sense when a pedestrian is in the apron, the ramp to cross, and it'll start flashing.
Nice.
So it'll alert drivers. It's not a push button type. It senses the person in the crosswalk or ready to cross. So I'm not sure when those will be fired up. It'll be pretty soon, I'm gonna guess, so.
I guess I did have one question. I'd echo the positive comments that I heard. On Friday night, do the lights go on? And maybe Matt can answer, or maybe Bruce has to answer. Do they go on? Are they censored or are they manual?
And the mayor could comment better
They
than
had
me.
a problem. There was a photo eye problem, and it happened to glitch Friday night. So, no, they should have came on sooner, but for some reason,
And they kind of flickered when they came
yeah,
on and off.
and that was the photo eye. So they got that replaced, and somebody replaced it Friday night, Kenny's Waybury.
It was very dramatic though when it happened, so I think everyone was surprised and how different it was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Murphy's Law, so.
Yeah,
Can go wrong, it will go wrong, and it did.
so,
Okay, well, so, the item we have here before you tonight is, on the TH-19 Main Street Reconstruction Project is a resolution directing modification of the construction contract. This is change orders 21, 22, and 23. I think in the agenda, it did say through 24. At the last moment, we had to pull, change order number 24 because it was being reviewed by a subcontractor who couldn't get to it and okay it in time. I should also point out, I know, Sean, you had asked that, last month, we've been waiting for the change order review from the contractor regarding the sand backfill at the Bargain Betty's area. And they're still reviewing it. They haven't gotten it back to me, so that's still pending.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
so anyway, to give a real quick recap of the three change orders. Change order 21, this item's actually 100% MnDOT, but it basically they had requested some special materials be produced for the project. It was in relation to some of the poor soils they dealt with here from like Central up to First, where they're putting some of that big rock in. They asked for extra rock to be produced. The supplier produced it. It wasn't needed, and what MnDOT basically did as a resolve is they agreed to buy it directly from the contractor. So this is 100% MnDOT, 100% purchase for them, but it had to be done as a change order, as a mechanism to pay for it. Change order 22, this was actually kind of a unique situation that we had to resolve, and I should explain that the sidewalk in the right-of-way is paid for by MnDOT. The sidewalk that's kind of beyond the right-of-way up to the buildings is actually by the cost participation policies paid for by the city. But it falls under this, what we call the funding, that federal grant. So we have that federal grant that's an 80-20 split. That's where those sidewalks are covered. This was kind of unique in that we had to bring in a specialized subcontractor. When they were doing the removal, because of the way the entry to the chamber building was constructed and jointed, when they pulled the sidewalk away, it actually pulled away part of the entrance, and you could look right down into the basement and onto a joist of their floor joist. And we had to work with the property owner to get, the property owner had to do some repair on the steel joist, and then we had to bring in a concrete contractor to do specialty work that we didn't want to necessarily have the road contractor do. So since it was unique work, we did it as a change order. The funding on this is still, again, on that federal grant, that 80-20 split. So again, 80% of it's covered by federal, and the 20% is a city match, which we use state aid funds or basically municipal state aid funds for that. Change order 23 was basically a change in the scope of work. It was a stretch of storm sewer pipe down by the park that had been called out to be removed. But because of some utility work that took place to get out of the way of the new construction, gas main, electric lines that were in, it was determined it was going to be troublesome, problematic, and be a delay to do a removal of that pipe, and it was decided to do what they call an abandon, a fill and abandon. So they blow it full of sand, they leave it in place. And the cost is more, and that was, the cost difference is this $22.50. To trying to resolve the issue, we agreed with MnDOT staff to do a 50-50 split, and the city's share of that 50-50 again out of that federal 80-20 split. That would be, that was the city's share. So the city's actually portion of that is going to be about $225. That 20% from that 80-20 split.
225 or 2,200?
Well, no, the city's share, so 50-50 split between MnDOT, and we'll call it the
Yep.
city, but the city's portion is being paid 80-20
Yep.
federal, and then 20% local. So the actual out of the city's pocket, so to speak, is $225,
Oh, okay.
which again is funded by probably municipal state aid funds is where that $225 will come from. So that's really it in a nutshell. In summary, I guess any questions on the change orders? Otherwise, it's, the action is a consideration of that resolution, modifying the construction contract. Again, the total of those three change orders, $21,216.22 to increase the contract to $13,175,950.38.
Anybody have any questions for Chris? Otherwise, I'd take a motion to adopt the change orders.
I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution 21-09-20-02, direct the modification of the existing construction contract change orders 21 through 23.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Bruce, seconded by Maggie. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Okay, next item, also related to the TH19 Main Street reconstruction project. This is, for your consideration is resolution declaring the cost to be assessed, ordering preparation of the proposed assessment, and calling for the hearing on the proposed assessment. Just to quick summarize the agenda report you have in front of you. The project's final construction contract amount obviously is not known at this time because it's still being finalized. We have to reconcile a bunch of quantities, but right now at this point it's estimated with change orders and reconciled unit quantities. It's estimated about $13.3 million for construction. And I'd like to point out that does not include the lighting because the lighting was a separate account, or what we call a force account. So the work was actually furnished and installed by New Prague Utilities, but funded 80-20 by that federal grant. So, really it's about a $14.3 million construction contract, so to speak, but $1 million of that was a separate force account. The city's obligation for contribution of the project is about $5.2 million. This is for the sewer, the water, and then basically the items based on the cost participation policy that the city's required to contribute to the project. Of that, the benefiting properties on the project are proposed to contribute just over $1.7 million in assessments, or approximately 1/3 of the city's obligation to the project. The exact amount is shown in the resolution and in the assessment roll, but that's $1,710,188.55 that is proposed to be assessed. The next step in this improvement project is basically to order the assessment roll and hold the assessment hearing. The assessment roll has been prepared. At this time, we're looking at holding the assessment hearing at the October 18th meeting at 6 o'clock. Notices for the assessments will be published in the New Prague Times and sent in the mail. Again, this is per Minnesota State Statutes 429. I did include in your packet, for those of you that recall, we did this in the 2019 project. We've done it in the projects in the past, but I usually will include like a cover letter that just kind of explains the assessment process in simpler terms, because what they get in mail by state statute is the notice of assessment, which is a little too legal and a little too confusing for a lot of folks. So this is what they will receive in the mail, again, is this notice of a proposed assessment. This is just a sample. And again, then we include that cover letter with it to help explain things a little and answer kind of some of the pretty typical questions that we get during the assessment process. So, and then included with that, of course, is that resolution. And then I realize there's a lot of information on this spreadsheet, but that is the assessment roll that's proposed. And then notices would be mailed beginning next week. Again, for that hearing on the 18th of October. Any questions on assessment process? I guess maybe I should point out, there's nothing new in terms of, the information that was provided at all the public meetings, all the public hearings. We held 2 public hearings on the project. The street assessments have never changed. They've always been the same. We always said that during the early meetings that the water and sewer service assessments would be determined after the bids. Those were finalized, those were published and presented to folks, again, as part of their decision-making to decide if they were gonna have a 6-inch water service or 1-inch. So again, that information that was presented, that's still here. So none of that has changed. Again, and none of the street assessments have changed, since it was presented in the feasibility study as well as all the meetings. The one thing that's a little different on this project, just a reminder, on all the past neighborhood projects, we've always assessed properties by we'll call it a true unit basis. So all residential properties, one property, one lot, one unit. When we got to the downtown, we had so many lots that were so many different sizes. It didn't seem to make sense to do that here, so we did it based on an equivalent front foot basis, and then we charged, the assessments are based on a front footage of those lots, which again is a common way to do it, but just not the way it's traditionally been done on all the, we'll call it the neighborhood projects. So, and that again hasn't changed since the beginning.
Did that follow our policy then, or did you change?
That was
Did you do that on your own?
No, that was presented in a feasibility study, so it was unique to this project, and because it was presented in a feasibility study as a methodology to be used here, that's completely acceptable.
Okay.
And again, it's still following policy, but it was kind of a modification to fit this unique circumstances on this project.
And that was approved at council?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just to explain again, there's the residential units are still all the same. And all we did is we just converted to an equivalent front foot rate, and then was able to apply those front foot rates to all these non-residential properties in the downtown.
So the 6-inch services are all in the numbers
Correct.
here. And
Yep.
then how close is the estimated assessment to the original estimated assessment?
It was the original assessment was a little bit higher. I don't recall exactly. It was still in that 1.7. I want to say it was a few $100,000 more, but it probably was based on us making a whole lot of assumptions on what type of water services were going to go in. Ultimately, we thought we were going to have a lot more people bringing them into buildings. We thought we were going to have a lot more people doing some 6-inch services, and it was it was different in the end, and it meant by doing fewer, the cost for the city will be less, the cost on the water system will be less, so the assessments were less. So it all balances out in the end, because almost all the water services are 100%, the cost is 100% assessed. So it just depends on how many got done in the end.
So our estimate on here is 1.7 million, and originally it was higher than that?
Yeah, we just did it, because in the feasibility study, we had I'd have to confirm what it was in the feasibility study. And the feasibility study was strictly a guess on like how many of whatever type of water service we were gonna put in. And we didn't know the values at the time, so those were estimates at that time. No, I don't recall exactly what that number was.
I guess I would just like to know, just in case someone asks, if you strip out the water issue, that is, kind of dependent upon how many people did it, but everything else.
Yeah.
To see how we compared with the original estimates and if we're high, just so we can explain.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know that we'll get questions, but it'd be nice to
Yep.
be able to answer the question if it gets asked.
Yeah, I'll have that information, beforehand, and maybe I'll get some of that information. I'll send it to Josh, and he can certainly send it out to you too to answer that question. It's, like I said, it's not really, it doesn't have a lot of bearing on what we're doing now, because it was just a guess on how many were gonna go in and what those costs were gonna be, which were assessed at 100%. And, so this is based on the actual stuff that was installed and the actual costs that were put in terms of water services.
Yeah, I totally
Yeah.
agree and understand, but to bring a property owner from where their mind was to where they are today might be helpful.
Yep, gotcha.
So the 4-inch, it's listed at $2,200.
Yeah.
And can you recall what it was back last February?
We didn't actually have that as an estimate. That had been we weren't aware of some 2-inch lines, so we had to base it on what the actual cost was. So those weren't necessarily numbers that were advertised. But again, our position in the feasibility study is it's gonna be based on the cost. So that was a rate that we had to come up with there's about 2 or 3 properties that had 2-inch that we weren't aware of until they got installed. The cost is more because the valves are more, the pipe is more, et cetera, so.
So going from the 2 to the 4, this 4-inch pipe right here that's listed for all of them at
Well,
2,200.
4-inch is sanitary sewer. We don't
Okay.
actually have any 4-inch water.
Oh, okay, I'm looking at sewer, you were talking
Yeah.
water, so then,
Yeah,
I guess what I wanted to say is I had heard from one business owner that number was less than what it actually came out to. So I wanted to know if this $2,200 is the new reflection, and at first in February when we had this sheet, that it was listed at $1,600. Cause the business owner I talked to thought his total assessment went up like $4,000
so.
from where he initially
Yeah.
thought it was, going to Bruce's.
Yeah,
In their mind, they have it,
yeah,
From where
just
they-
a reminder that when we were in the public meetings and public hearings, we said, we don't know what the water and sewer service costs are gonna be, we won't know till after we bid it. And that's when we came out with that information, right after the bid, we brought it to council, and we published it presented it to all the property owners. And
so how much was it from your initial estimate to where the
They
actual
were,
bid
they
came
were
in?
less.
It
They
was
were
less.
all a little bit, they were all somewhat less
Okay,
in the original estimates. These numbers probably reflect we'll call it the difficulty of this project, because you're in the downtown, you have a lot more challenges, and it's probably reflective of the bids. So those were hard numbers, difficult numbers to nail down during the early estimates. They weren't significantly higher, but they were all higher than originally we had estimated back in the feasibility phase.
do you have a rough idea of a percentage or something? I'm just trying to get to where he was in his mind and
Well, for example, 22-inch water service was probably $1,500 or something like that. I don't remember. I can get you that, again, that sounds like good information to get to council, so you had to have that ahead of time,
Okay.
so. And I know we presented it when we presented the rates that we were gonna present to the public, but obviously I don't
Well,
recall it, and you don't recall it either, and I won't
Yeah, and
expect you to either.
And
so.
I'm guessing the business owner probably never attended any of those or saw them or,
Well, and a lot of people sat down in these meetings and they wrote down the numbers, and we always were pretty specific to say, we don't know what the sewer and water service rates will be. Those will be determined after bids, so.
Okay,
So we said the street stuff will stay the same, and it has, and would continue based on what we're proposing, so.
okay.
Any other questions on the assessment or assessment process?
So, go ahead.
with that unique, additional assessment for the Schultzes, was that gonna be over 15 years? I just can't remember what the agreement was.
I think the default would, okay, is it gonna be over 15 years?
Be over 15 years unless they were gonna pay it off ahead of time, but they told us that they're not gonna pay that off.
Okay, so there,
Like
I-
maybe a 15 year.
there was a, option for them to do that.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good question. I forgot to point that out. So that sits in there as a kind of a unique assessment, but obviously that's all covered by agreement and everything, so.
Okay, any other questions for Chris? All right, who wants to offer the resolution to call for a public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Sean made the motion to offer the resolution, seconded by Bruce. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, County Road 15, Columbus Avenue.
Okay, well, now we're talking about next year. For you, for your consideration is, resolution ordering the preparation of the study for the, County Road State Aid Highway 15 or Columbus Avenue for the 2022, CIP project. Give you a little background, it's listed in the report. Again, this would be, County Road 15 from Main Street all the way up to, 12th Street up by the high school. Scott County has identified the County State Aid Highway 15 between Trunk Highway 19 and 12th Street in their 2021 to 2030 Transportation Improvement Plan. And I did provide a sheet from their tip is included, so you can see that it is included. They also have this in their planning as a proposed jurisdictional transfer or turn back. This is very similar to what we did with County Road 37 back in 2019. I know, just a sidestep a little bit here, I know back in, during the County Road 37, there were some questions about the validity of the city taking a turn back. And I probably didn't have a good enough explanation at the time. And we're not necessarily acting on a turn back now, but we need to realize this is what is in the plan, and this would be the what's being presented going forward. So jurisdictional transfers or turnbacks are pretty common. So county is getting state highways, cities are getting county roads. Sometimes they get even MnDOT roads. And it just depends on the traffic volume, size, location, and does it really make sense to be, for example, in this case, to continue to be a county road. The other is it allows the county to take that jurisdiction or that designation and move that somewhere else. And in the long-term planning, the county stated highway jurisdiction or designation is proposed to, at least at this time, to go to like Alton Avenue. And then reconnect up into 15 up north of the city there. The other thing that happens is the county can turn it back whether the city accepts it or not. So what we are in a position to do is we're here to negotiate with the county on some reasonable improvement to that roadway so that when it is transferred, that it's transferred in a good condition, that it will last a long term for our maintenance and stuff like that. The other thing is the city as a municipal state aid city, meaning we've talked about the municipal state aid system that we have, where all our local mileage, as we call it, all our local streets, we can take 20% of that mileage and designate it to state aid routes. So like 2nd Street here to the north, and there's various 10th Avenue Southeast is a state aid street. And we get revenue based on that. So for all the local streets, we get, for every mile we have, we get 20% of that mileage gets us revenue through the state aid system. When a city takes on a county state aid highway, it's actually 1-to-1. We get, so that mile that would get turned back, we get a whole mile that goes onto our state aid system and not 20% of the mileage. And so just give you a real rough idea that next year, if that's turned back and we get revenue for that roadway, the revenue is based on the average daily traffic on a route, on the state aid route. Our highest revenue bearing road is 10th Avenue Southeast. It has the